You have no idea how deep the deception runs. You were not just taught to be polite. You were indoctrinated to amputate your power and call it virtue. You were taught to romanticize your own obedience. You were trained, like a domesticated beast, to wag your tail in the presence of disapproval. And when the woman frowns, when her affection is withheld, when her gaze shifts cold, you panic, you perform, you apologize, and you think you're doing what a good man should. But Nietzsche already told you, the weak are more likely to moralize their submission as goodness. It is not virtue, it is fear wearing a halo. You were not broken by cruelty. You were broken by your own hunger to be loved. You betrayed yourself for a smile. You abandoned your values for a kiss. You restructured your soul to be less threatening, less masculine, less you. And then she left anyway. Or worse, she stayed and disrespected you, because you taught her that your manhood was for sale, and all it took to buy it was a withdrawal of warmth. Most men collapse under this. They call it love, but it's survival. They want peace at any price, even if it costs them their center. And when they are used, discarded, or cheated on, they still return. Not out of strength, but out of addiction. Because when you don't have a spine, pain becomes the only thing you know how to cling to. But then, she meets him. The one man who doesn't break when she withdraws. The one who doesn't negotiate his standards for her affection. The one who doesn't entertain emotional theater or respond to weaponized silence. The Stoic man. The man who doesn't need her to feel real. And this terrifies her. She doesn't fear him because he's dangerous. She fears him because he's immune. He is not programmable. He is not dependent. He is not starved for her attention. He does not orbit her like a dog trained to fetch her mood. And so, she is confronted by something primal and ancient, a man who is no longer inside the psychological matrix she's been taught to control. Nietzsche wrote, "The higher man is distinguished from the lower by his fearlessness in facing the abyss." The Stoic man has faced it. He has stared into the void of abandonment and did not beg. He has been met with silence and did not collapse. He has been unloved and did not lose his reflection in the mirror, because he was forged by loss, not destroyed by it. He does not fear walking away, because he has walked alone before and found strength, not sorrow. His solitude is not a prison, it is a fortress. He does not tolerate disrespect, because he no longer tolerates the version of himself that ever did. He will not beg. He will not chase. He will not plead for the attention of someone who would use love as a leash. He is not the servant of her validation. He is the sovereign of his own soul. And that's what makes her tremble. Because most men are easily cracked. Withhold warmth and they whimper. Raise your voice and they shrink. Threaten to leave and they promise to change. But this one? This man does nothing. He simply watches. And in that stillness, she sees the collapse of her script. The lines she rehearsed no longer land. The emotional buttons she's always used now return no signal. Because this man is no longer plugged into her machinery. He sees the game, and he does not play it. You must understand something that modern culture will never tell you. The average man is not respected. He is managed. He exists in a limbo between utility and obedience. He is useful when compliant, praised when submissive, and replaced when he begins to question. And yet, he continues to serve. Why? Because he has been conditioned to seek affection like oxygen, to interpret validation as proof of existence. But Nietzsche warned us, he who does not have the strength to be alone will always be a slave. Most men today are slaves, and they call it love. They hand over their vision, their principles, their time, and their voice in the hope that it buys them peace. And for a while it seems to work. She smiles. She softens. She opens up. But it is a trap made of velvet, because behind the affection is an unspoken contract. You must remain predictable, pleasing, pliable. The moment you assert something she doesn't like, the contract is revoked, and most men, terrified of emotional exile, quickly fall back in line. But the Stoic man is not afraid of exile, because he's already been there and discovered that it is better to be alone in truth than adored in self-betrayal. He will not shrink for her comfort. He will not lie for her praise. He will not dilute himself just to be allowed close. He's not trying to be accepted. He's trying to remain intact. And that, more than any strength or wealth or charm, is what makes women uneasy in his presence, because it means she has no control. She cannot dictate the tempo of the relationship with silence. She cannot summon his attention by withholding her body. She cannot bend his frame with guilt or emotional spectacle. She is, for the first time, face to face with a man who sees her clearly and remains unmoved. Nietzsche wrote, "The most perfidious way of harming a cause consists of defending it deliberately with faulty arguments." In the context of modern masculinity, the cause is your strength, and the faulty argument is that strength is cruelty, that boundaries are abuse, that stoicism is emotional repression. But these are lies told to keep you dependent, because a man who does not need to be approved of is a man who cannot be controlled. The Stoic man has dismantled these arguments within himself. He knows the truth, that peace without power is submission, that compassion without clarity is weakness, that love without respect is slow suicide. And because he knows this, he no longer participates in emotional games. He doesn't argue with irrationality. He doesn't explain his silence. He doesn't validate behavior that violates his soul. He simply withdraws, quietly, finally. And in doing so, he triggers something few women have ever felt: the panic that comes from losing access to a man who doesn't need you. Because make no mistake, most modern relationships are not built on mutual reverence. They are built on emotional leverage. And the Stoic man, through his presence alone, destroys the entire economic structure of power that so many unconsciously rely on. She is used to winning by default, but now she has to earn him, not with beauty, not with tears, not with temporary compliance, but with truth, and very few can give it. She is not used to being evaluated. She is used to being pursued, to being admired on arrival, to being given a crown before she has spoken a word. She is accustomed to men who fold before even being asked, men who offer their loyalty before vetting her character, men who trade their standards for a smile. But the Stoic man does not offer the throne. He does not praise what he does not respect, and she feels that, and it destabilizes her, because he is not looking for someone to save. He is looking for someone who has already saved herself, and she begins to feel what Nietzsche described when he said, "What is done out of love always takes place beyond good and evil." The Stoic man loves, but not with conditions dictated by society, not with the rules she was raised to expect. He loves without submission, without distortion, without sacrifice of self. And that love is more dangerous than any form of rejection, because it asks her to be more than she is. Most men lower themselves to gain a woman's trust, but the Stoic man remains high and challenges her to rise. And this is why she shakes, because most men crave access. But this man doesn't crave, he guards. He guards his time, his values, his direction, and more importantly, he guards his emotional world, not with fear, but with reverence. His emotions are earned, not extracted. His intimacy is a privilege, not a reward. He is not emotionally distant, he is emotionally disciplined. And that's a form of masculinity she's never encountered before. It doesn't beg, it doesn't impress, it doesn't perform. It simply exists with force and expects her to either come correct or leave. Nietzsche said, "You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist." That's how the Stoic man lives. He doesn't try to be perfect, he tries to be true. And because he is true, he cannot be bought. Not by beauty, not by compliments, not by promises of love laced with manipulation. He sees the truth in her that she tries to hide. He sees her need for control disguised as vulnerability, her tests disguised as affection, her chaos disguised as passion, and he calls it out, not with words, but with refusal. He does not engage, he does not reward it, he does not bend, because he is not here to please her nervous system, he is here to protect his own. This is what sets him apart. While other men calibrate themselves to her approval, he calibrates himself to his mission. And she realizes, often without words, that she is not the center of his universe. His purpose is. And if she cannot align with that purpose, she will be left behind, not with malice, but with unapologetic precision. This is the emotional earthquake, not his anger, not his dominance, but his consistency, his unshakable identity, his refusal to flinch under pressure. She throws everything at him, withdrawal, drama, silence, seduction, and still he does not budge, because he has already decided what kind of man he will be, and no woman, no matter how beautiful or desirable, will rewrite his definition. That, Winston, is what shakes her, not because he is cruel, but because he is complete. The most terrifying mirror a woman can face is not one made of glass. It is a man who sees her clearly and doesn't flinch. Because every fantasy she was raised to believe, every social cue she learned to exploit, every move that once worked on dozens of men dies in his presence. The manipulation fails, the performance collapses, the mask slips, and for the first time, she is confronted with an unbearable question. What do I offer a man who cannot be seduced? She expected to be worshipped for her beauty, but he's not interested in beauty if it's not matched by behavior. She expected him to chase, but he doesn't chase what does not move with grace toward him. She expected to be the gravity in the relationship, but she realizes he orbits nothing except his own truth. Nietzsche wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will often be lonely. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." That's exactly what she feels, a man who owns himself. She has no power over him, not because he's closed, but because he's sorted. He doesn't need her to affirm who he is. His masculinity doesn't wobble in the presence of her disapproval. He can love her fully, but he will never beg to be loved back. He will never barter with his identity to win her affection. And in that posture, he becomes something most women have never truly experienced, a man who is emotionally present, yet psychologically untouchable. This is what forces her to confront herself, because now she must ask, can I match this man's standard without games? Can I stand in my own truth without tactics? Can I give without expecting to govern? Most can't, because most have never had to. They've been surrounded by men who collapse under tension, men who confuse affection with self-erasure, men who offer their crown in exchange for comfort. But this man, the Stoic man, does not trade. He offers. And if his offer is not respected, he retracts it with finality. No explanation, no negotiation, no prolonged drama. He doesn't warn, he doesn't threaten. He just vanishes and leaves her alone with her untested self. Nietzsche warned us that the greatest danger in life is not pain, but comfort that numbs you to your own mediocrity. The Stoic man brings no such comfort. He brings pressure, not by shouting, but by existing at a level of emotional clarity and internal structure that exposes every falsehood around him. And she feels it. She feels the quiet pressure of being in the presence of someone who does not need her to feel powerful, who does not ask for her permission to stand tall, who does not flatter her fears or inflate her ego just to keep her around. This man is a reckoning, a philosophical confrontation, a walking storm of honesty that says, become who you truly are, or leave. He doesn't make ultimatums. He doesn't set traps. He simply holds frame, and the world either aligns or breaks against it. The Stoic man doesn't change the rules. He reveals them. He reveals that most love is not love. It is power disguised as affection, that most relationships are not built on truth, but on unspoken threats. If you do not make me feel what I want to feel, I will withdraw. That's the real contract. One you've signed in silence, with your pride as the currency. But the Stoic man burns that contract on arrival. He does not accept love that comes with a leash. He does not bow to moods or barter with respect. He has chosen something higher than affection. He has chosen himself. And that choice is what Nietzsche called the beginning of all true power. Because you cannot call yourself free if your peace can be bought with approval. You cannot call yourself strong if your standards collapse when touched by silence. You cannot call yourself a man if you must be emotionally supervised by someone else. The Stoic man has walked through all of it. He's had women cry in front of him to gain control. He's had affection dangled like bait. He's had sex weaponized and silence rehearsed to provoke a reaction. But none of it works. Not anymore. Because he has seen through the mask. Nietzsche wrote, "He who fights with monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." And the Stoic man has done exactly that. He has stared into the black hole of emotional dependence. He has confronted the version of himself that once begged, that once twisted and folded and bled for love, that was never truly love. And he killed that version, without ceremony, without regret. He does not hate her. He has simply evolved beyond her control, and now she sees it. This man does not flinch when she's angry. He does not panic when she's distant. He does not dance when she throws a tantrum. He simply remains, not cold, not cruel, just centered. And that presence, that unshakable presence, is what shakes her to the core, because it tells her, without words, "I am not here for your chaos. I am here for truth. Match it, or I walk." She is no longer the gravity in the room. She is no longer the prize. She is no longer the puppet master, pulling strings of guilt and desire. She is simply one soul standing before another. And for the first time, her tricks don't work. Now she has two choices: rise or retreat. And Nietzsche would call this the moment of self-overcoming, the moment where she must abandon manipulation and walk through the fire of truth to stand beside a man who no longer bends. But few do, because truth is expensive, and most would rather keep their control than risk their identity. This is why Stoic men are feared, not because they are cruel, but because they force transformation, or they force departure. There is no middle ground. There is no half-true love. Not here. Not with him. Most men you meet are either trying to be accepted or trying to be understood. They're selling something. Kindness, loyalty, patience, charm, in hopes that it will buy them a seat at a table that was never set for them. But the Stoic man is not selling. He is not waiting to be chosen. He is not adjusting his value to match demand. He is the table. He does not chase, he summons, not through arrogance, but through alignment. His life is not a resume of qualities he hopes you notice.